Martini to pass that, what she wrote out, to the ad hoc committee.
Exactly.
As well as the trustees, give us time to consider that and see what the recommendation will be from the policy committee to do that. You've obviously spent a lot of time in preparing that, and I think that it's worthwhile for the other people, the rest of us, to take a little more look at that.
Well, that's what I'm saying. We have a process. We have a committee set up that deals with all these issues in the policy. Then it goes to the ad hoc committee, and then it comes to us. Okay? And after the first reading, we have an opportunity to make changes, whatever, if we send it back to the policy committee.
Mm-hmm.
So what we're going to do is we're going to adopt the policy to the conclusion that we want. That's what we're doing.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not good business.
When it comes to the final reading, I mean, not now, because it's the first reading, but
Mm-hmm.
I appreciate your comments. I mean, we're all trying to be equal in the eyes of the good Lord and the government, as hasn't been proven very much in our political process. But personally, I think we have a process that we need to abide by. If we establish these committees and we establish an ad hoc committees, then they're the ones that should bring it up to us so that we can study whether we agree or not agree.
Mm-hmm.
And
We've got a first-class attorney who's given us an opinion and has written us a statement.
but I
So-
guess what you've indicated, Mike, is that we send it back with
What I heard Trustee
Yes.
Riley say was that he would like to have Trustee DeMartini's comments, and then perhaps we can provide some additional information in terms of
Exactly.
the process for resolution of complaints for those who perhaps are not covered by CBAs or board policies. And then you can consider that as in the second reading. Is that what I heard? Okay.
And this was discussed at the policy and procedure meeting, but Connie felt that it was important enough that the whole board should be in on it.
well, sure, I understand that, but once it gets to us, things should have been worked out so that it makes it a little easier for us to try to determine what's right and what's wrong, or what we want to add or what we want to delineate from the policy. That's all I'm saying. I mean, I'm not saying that we should accept this right now as it is. I'm just saying that once we look at this, and if we have suggestions to how it should be revised or redone, then that should go back for the second and come back to it in the second reading. That's all I'm saying.
And we will do that. We'll make sure that that occurs. And in the policy committee, the ad hoc committee, we absolutely did talk about this issue, and we talked about the fact that there are full-time folks who are covered by CBAs, and there are trustees. There is a process to bring complaints to resolution per board policy 2715 for trustees. Their students are also covered under a board policy 5500, which is before you today. And so the two groups that are not covered by CBAs or board policy are volunteers and adjuncts, but they are covered by the law for due process, and that is what our district follows. And so they are not included in this policy per se. And so that was the response as we talked about that in discussion. And Trustee DeMartini still feels very passionate, as she said, about this, and so we needed to bring that to the board.
Well, we have another problem too, and that is there's this reference that Articles 39 and 40 are taking care of the faculty's concerns. And our issue is that, well, yes, we have 39 and 40 that were added in last year's contract, but it hasn't been followed. Within weeks after our contract was ratified, it was already violated. And I have specific instances, some of which I already addressed to the board earlier this year. I think it was in January. To this date, we still don't know why one faculty in particular was accused of violating Ed Code 87732. And when we asked specifically what the issue was, to this date, we still don't know what that was. We have faculty members who were told, you will be recorded, and when they said we don't want to, yes, they were recorded under the statement that if you don't, you're being insubordinate leading up to termination. That sounds like coercive practices in a district that's supposed to honor people. Further, we used to not have this practice at all. We used to not record people, and then suddenly we changed it. So we've changed past practice in this process. I would like to reiterate the YFA's request. We've submitted a written analysis from our attorneys about why we think some of these things need to be changed. And we have not gotten anything in like manner from the district's attorneys. I've seen a nice little PowerPoint set of slides, but that doesn't cut it. I am respectfully requesting a formal response to the analysis we sent off. And finally, as I mentioned, this is my third time I'm saying this now. I've mentioned it in our district council, and I mentioned it at the study session at the last time when I spoke to the board. We are demanding impact bargaining over this issue.
I'm not sure I understand what all that has to do with the issue on the agenda.
Yeah, I don't either.
That's what I'm saying. I'm trying to hold to the policy that we have here.
Yeah, that we're discussing here.
And some of the things that I hear is that I have to be answered by an attorney. I mean, I'm no lawyer, and I know that lawyers make money fighting against each other, so you can't have more than one opinion.
So Chair Rojas, I did hear what the request is regarding 3435 in terms of notification and such, and we'll provide that information to you
Thank
on
you.
this one. Okay, so I'll move on now to 5500, if that's okay, standards of conduct. You also had quite a few pages there with some red on it, and I won't go through all of those today. You do have them. That's cleanup language from our subject matter area leaders. Remember, that's the first stop for all policies now. We get a document from CCLC often, or what we have, and we bring it to subject matter area leaders, the folks who are in the practice and operations and working on those things. So our student discipline officers, our vice presidents of student services looked at these. They went through the process. Changes and revisions were made through the policy and procedure committee, through district council, so on and so on. And the subject matter area leaders took a look at them again and needed to provide some cleanup language. And so that's what you see in front of you with these documents. And one example is on the first page, page 5 of 19, line 40.
Oh, she gave us one in our.
Defines student as any person who has been accepted for admission or is currently enrolled. So you see that in the red. So those are the type of cleanup sort of languages that are changed. So I would ask that you have a look at those, and we'll bring those back for second read. And if there's anything else on 5500, let me know. Then I will move on. Will I move on? Yeah.
I think I see maybe the dilemma here, and Eileen, please correct me if I'm wrong. When you talk about due process, there's real basic due process, and that's just notice and an opportunity to be heard. Then there's a more expanded due process where, you get know the charges, can confront the accuser, etc. And I see that we're taking that out of the student conduct section here. So I think that's the dilemma that we're talking about, kind of the nub of the dilemma.
Right, and I also need to be very careful here. My client is the district, which acts through a majority of the board. And my job is to communicate my legal opinions to you, the board, not to anyone else unless the board directs me to do so. So I want to be very careful that I not violate any attorney-client privilege here. But yes, there are, the term due process is overused and used incorrectly very widely. There are at least 2 stages at which due process might attach. Also, it's important to remember that due process is driven by the status of, it's a creature of status. A temporary employee has significantly less due process right than a tenured faculty member or a permanent classified employee. It is the nature of their status, their employment, that gives rise to the whatever process they are due.
I understand that, but is there anything in the law that prevents this district from treating all of our employees the same way, to be generous to all of them and give them the same due process rights that you say come with the status of full-time employees? Is there anything in the law that prevents that?
I am not aware of anything that prevents the board from doing that, but the board would be dramatically exceeding what is required of it.
Thank you.
But you don't know of anything that, I mean, I think treating people all the same goes a long way for showing that civility. And didn't you say the Disney thing, it was about it was the human personnel thing that was important? I think it would go a long way to telling everybody that they're important.
You are confusing
Yeah.
due process with
Something
civility.
else. I agree.
Just for time's sake, I won't argue with that, but I don't disagree with your statement.
Any other questions from
Any
the
other
board I can
questions?
answer?
Move on.
Thank you.
Thank you. We'll move on to 6,700. And on page 5 of 7, you have a replacement page. And that begins on line 4. Rental for property leased shall be the fair rental value. As, and this is the phrase that is being recommended for deletion, as determined by a rental schedule adopted by the Board of Trustees. That is not something that has occurred in at least several years. And so good eye on that one in the ad hoc committee, and so it's being recommended for deletion.
Any comment about having water in a facility, bottled water?
I didn't do the water. I didn't do the water. But, yeah.
For second reading, check on that, okay?
Okay, I will check on it. The question is, in this policy and procedure, it says that no food or drink are allowed in classrooms. And so the question is,
guys
can we
allow
allow
water?
bottled water?
Do you allow water in your classrooms?
In the classroom, I thought you were talking about the Senate. I'm sorry, we had a whole
Oh, I don't know
three
about
meetings
that.
about whether we could have bottled water in the Senate or not.
Can you?
So I will check on
Yeah,
that for
can
second
you?
reading.
It's,
Yeah.
it's
How
the
about
issue of
classrooms?
bottles. Don't ask.
Oh, okay,
not water.
okay. I don't want to talk the plastic versus the,
Yeah.
that.
The new district office has dispensers where you can reuse your glass, so we're eco-friendly.
Actually, can it, out of this discussion I'm sorry, I got teased a lot about it. So about bottled water in the Senate, one of the things and the recommendations that came was to have refill stations for the students in like Founders Hall and other places. I mean, you see them in the airports and everywhere. Is there something we can do about that? I mean, it's just a pitch.
There's
here.
always something we can do.
We already have the cost associated with that.
Yes,
Okay.
and so those things are moving along.
Did I hear someone had a question about this policy 6700? I thought I heard somebody say I had a question. Okay. So that was all I had in first read.
Introduce the policies that are first reading. Further comment?
Yeah. This isn't about the issues during the last, but as I was listening to the responses to what I said, I'd like to point out a couple of items very quickly. I'm hearing that different parts of the law and collective bargaining agreement address what could be called due process, which is a very general term. I hear that. On item number 1 about the respondent, no matter who, we're talking about the full-time talking about all faculty members really, in the white paper proposal. The idea that they receive a copy of the complaint or a detailed summary. Article 39 does address that, but as I said, quite vaguely about the nature and scope. It is not specific. And there are a number of things about this policy that also spill over into the realm of negotiations. It's an either-or fallacy to suggest that, therefore, we shouldn't talk about them over here in the policy realm. We are talking about them, and I'm obligated to do so. And the idea about Title IX requiring certain requirements related to what we call due process applying to everybody applies here. You know, what we were able to get in collective bargaining is beside the point. So that Article 39 addresses some due process issues. It doesn't exclude what needs to be done here. If you were to remedy for the people that aren't union members the due process concern there, if you were to remedy it for everybody who isn't in a union because they're not in a union, then that would leave it inadequate for people who are in a union. You know, never mind the either-or fallacy. As far as you can have an advisor and it could be an attorney, specifically what was advocated is you could have your union advisor and an attorney. All right, of course the law already says you can have an advisor. We knew that, we addressed that specifically. As far as scheduling interviews and meetings and so on, I heard it said that Article 39 addresses that, reasonably accommodated class schedules. I just looked, I can't find it. I've looked a bunch of times, it's not there. As far as the idea of an advisor taking an active part, I heard it said that the person's not allowed to interfere. That is totally beside the point I made. Of course, no one should be allowed to interfere with the appropriate process. But I know of cases where essentially an advisor was told to shut up and sit down when making a comment about due process, about process as required by district policy, trying to elicit facts, whatever, right? And finally, about preponderance of evidence. We noted specifically Title IX requires that standard. Our specific objection, which I read to you, was 3435 goes beyond considerations of Title IX to all kinds of discrimination. That's been alluded to. And that if you can use that better standard, I would argue it's better, I did, of clear and convincing, you should. It's more fair. And the response we hear was, well, Title IX requires it on certain issues. We already said that. So I'm hearing some of these responses as not being directly irrelevant. I did hear some to the effect of, well, our attorney disagrees with your attorney. That's going to take further study, and I understand the dilemma you're in. But please recognize that some of those responses weren't relevant to what were our concerns. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Well, there's really, I don't think of us on the board. That's why we have an attorney to try to give us the best possible description of what that policy abides by the educational code law. And I know from past experience, there's a difference between civil law and educational law. And so I don't know if I'm correct on that, Tom, or not, but there is a difference with, I worked for the city some 25 years and more, and we address things differently than we do in the educational law when I was on the school board in Turlock. So there's different interpretations, and we have to apply the one that applies to us in particular so that we're protected by the law, and that's why we hire an attorney to try to keep us on the straight and narrow path. And as far as I'm concerned, that's all we can really do. And then among ourselves, try to determine which is the best way to administer that policy. And that's the way I look at it. So with that, we'll move on to, we'll close that hearing for the first reading and move on to the second reading on the articles as noted from 5030 all the way to 6220.
Thank you. You have 11 second readings before you this evening, and I have changes to one. So if you don't mind, I'll jump right to that. That is to 6620. And at our last board meeting, you directed me to address a few things. One was include language that really clarified that all facility naming opportunities of a lasting nature must be approved by the board, and so that has been clarified. 2, define a subunit of a building, and that has been clarified. And 3, to maintain the flexibility to allow things listed in B, facilities listed in B, to be named without a financial contribution. And so this is a draft before you to satisfy those 3 requests. And if you have any recommendations, I'm happy to make those changes.
I thought that struck the perfect balance to what we were talking about last time on 6620. Thank you.
So you're okay with that one, Tom? Okay, we'll move on to the next one.
So there were 11, and that was the last in the lineup. And so I would I'm done with my comments on those.
Any questions on any of the policies as presented? So this is the second reading. The recommendation is that the board conduct the second reading and approve the following: 50-30, 50-40, 50-50, 51-10, 51-30, 5700, 6100, 6340, 6400, 6530, and 6620 as attached to the August 10, 2016 agenda. Entertain a motion.
So moved.
Moved by Trustee Martin,
Second.
seconded by Trustee Viss. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Connie, and for your comments, and also the members in the audience, and Trustee DiMartini. Thank you for all your comments.
Get it to you.
Okay,
We're pulling 6.3. The Chancellor's
6.
office got a call and was asked to pull 6.3.
I see that, so we'll skip by 63.3, and we'll move on to 6.4, Amazon Smile. Sounds like a toothpaste commercial.
Chair Rojas, I was going to report on that to the board.
Thank you.
Trustee DiMartini had asked the district to look into this Amazon Smile. A little background on this: the district does purchase through Amazon.com currently with a $25,000 limit per month. What Amazon Smile does, and our director of purchasing did some research as well on this, if a 501(c), like our foundations are, or any nonprofit organization, registers with Amazon Smile, then purchases that are flagged through Amazon Smile, Amazon Smile will contribute to that 501(c)(3) 0.5% of the purchase price. And so we were asked to look into how that might work, how we might operationalize that in our district. And some of the questions that came up are, can we be donating to more than one 501(c)(3) at one time? And the answer is no to that. However, we have the flexibility to change the organization to which we would flag, and the 0.5% would go to that organization. In talking with our staff, if the board decides to move forward with that. Oh, and I should back up. The GVM has registered with Amazon Smile.
I was told that the other two foundations are also registered.
Oh, they also are now, because
they're
when we
all
did our
registered.
research, we didn't know that all three were. So that would be great if we decide to move forward with that. And one of the options, if you will, that we could do is have the 0.5% up to $25,000, if that's what we purchase in any given month, go to one of the foundations, and then that foundation could distribute out to the other two, to be equitable, because that was the first question that we grappled with. Do we just have all of this money? Well, I should say it's $125 a month if we purchase up to $25,000, or $1,500 a year. So staff, we have done the
Total?
research, pardon me?
In total?
A year?
In total.
And how much a month?
So we, $125 a month. So it's $125 a month, $1,500 annually. So, you know, because we had been asked several times to look into it, we did that due diligence at homework. And one of our options would be, is just like, as an example, designate GVM to collect the 0.5. Now, the district's out of it at that point. We make the purchase, we flag the organization, and then the organization receives directly that 0.5%, that $125 a month. And then we would suggest that the foundation then distribute it to the other two, if the board wants to go in that direction.
Oh.
Or, if, I mean, we're making the recommendation to be equitable across the three foundations of the, affiliated with YCCD. Or the GVM and the other two just collect it, But we can't audit it. All the financial end of it comes from Amazon Smile to the 501(c)(3). The district would be out of it after we flag the organization.
So you're saying that we wouldn't have control of the money?
No, it would go to the foundation. They would have
directly
control.
And they would decide where the
And they
money
would,
goes.
yes.
And, I mean, you've mentioned two right now, GMV and the foundation, I think.
Well, we have Columbia, Modesto, and Great Valley Museum.
Okay.
If we wanted to be equitable. The other way we could do it is on an annual basis, change the flag to another foundation.
To me, I would think that, you know, if three of you are splitting $125 a month, that's something, but it doesn't seem that it would be something that would be applicable to amounting to something. So I think the rotation basis, at least you would be gathering some $1,500 a year per se, that maybe you'd be able to use that amount of money rather than splitting it up between three. And I would imagine that if somebody else within the district wanted to be part of that process, would that be applicable too? In other words, if the ag department wanted some of that, participate.
Oh, well, ag is not a 501(c)(3). So it would be up to the foundations to make that call if they wanted to contribute to any of our departments.
Oh, okay.
So it would be the foundation's call at that point, separate board, separate decision-making.
Well, would it be, and I'll ask you, Mike and Ann, would it be reasonable to say that it would go to the foundation and the foundation would make the distribution? I think, to me,
That was the
then-
way, once we've done our research on this and how it all works, that would be how it would have to work, because it will be out of our control. What we do as we make the purchases is flag the 501(c)(3).
Okay.
And I appreciate what you just said, Chair Rojas, in that it probably does make more sense to, on an annual basis, say GVM receives it, and next year MJC, next year Columbia. Now, that would be your call to tell us how to rotate it and where to start. But to divvy up, and actually it's paid on a quarterly basis, but really the financial transaction costs behind writing a check to the other two foundations every quarter, I mean, it's not going to be that much, but it's still going to be, negate some of that proceed.
So it's not possible just to have the business office transfer it to the three?
No, because it goes to the foundation.
Okay, so let's say
It stays
theoretically
outside of the
Let's say it
district.
went to the GVM. Can't the GVM just transfer it to the other two? Divide it
could.
three ways? I mean, and that's
Well,
not a
transfer that
complicated.
amount, but it doesn't have to be that
Well,
money.
it's still, it's
Well, how do
still
we know that's
labor.
going to take place, though? My concern is the oversight when that happens, you know?
Well, if the board directs it, Al
It could always
Alt's in
be
charge of the
included in-
GVM, and he can look at the books and tell you if it's being done or not.
I don't think it's that big of an amount of money, and I think the foundations would trust each other, and it could always be audited in the annual audit if necessary. I'm not that familiar, other than what I've heard here, about the Amazon Smile.
Yeah, that's
Is that a difficult thing to set up and monitor and use?
As
And can
we have
individuals do that as
Yes,
well?
I was just
Could we
gonna say.
send out something to all our employees to say, why don't you start using Amazon Smile, and when you purchase something,
Great
put
question.
Modesto Junior College
Absolutely.
Foundation and
Yes.
leverage it?
In fact, the chancellor and I have talked about that, because that is really the way more revenue would be generated if everyone was aware, even in our district, that, oh, I can flag this when I go onto Amazon and make my purchases, either GVM, MJC Foundation, whatever. And an individual can change it every time they, make a purchase.
And an individual can designate 3 charities.
Oh, at one time I didn't look
Yes,
into
they can.
individuals. Okay, so
Well, the
really
thing
the
after-
revenue generation comes from more individual purchasing than a public entity like ours, because we're limited to this $25,000 a month. But our analysis, research, if you will, on the 25,000, it really will not be that much more work on the district. It just depends on what the board directs to us, where it will go, and then the foundations. And Al Alt, I'm so glad you're here, because it will be up to the foundation accounting to handle the distribution, if that's how the board chooses to go.
I have
Yeah, go ahead.
one question. Everybody that uses Amazon should go to Amazon Smile, choose your charity. several. But would there be confusion, like if we had, for example, GVM dispersing it, would they be able to tell what came from district purchases compared to what came from my purchases or Tom's?
Yes, yes, because the district, YCCD, will be making purchases.
But that amount will come as a different amount to GVM? That'll come in a separate check compared to all the individuals that have selected GVM as their recipient?
Absolutely.
Okay, so there's no
Right.
problem of dividing
Right, because
that.
they're our vendor, they're YCCD's vendor. If you sign up, if I sign up, then it's a Teresa Scott purchase, or it's a,
Right, but when YCCD's money comes, let's say theoretically, GVM or MJC Foundation or Columbia, will it also be mingled with the district purchases plus Ann's and Teresa's purchases?
No,
Will that come in
it'll be
one?
separate.
Okay. So
Of
then,
course, the bottom line for Amazon is to purchase their product. My question is that we're supposed to take the best cost of the purchase in order to save the district money overall. So if we have to buy something for $10 more because we want to get it from Amazon, I don't think that would be a reasonable reason to acquire.
Right, and that is not our practice. When we use Amazon because we're getting the best price.
That's
Yeah.
what I'm saying. So if
And then
it isn't the best
Amazon
price,
Smiles
then
is
we
the
wouldn't
same
buy it from
price.
Amazon.
right.
Oh, yeah, I can understand it. Well, I don't know
For
what
the,
your
from the
opinion is.
public funds angle of it, there's no difference really. It's just that this 0.5% goes to a 501(c)(3).
But my feeling is that if whatever the board decides, it would go to the foundation, and then the foundation would make it annually to a particular, like Golden Valley Museum or whatever the other ones that are eligible to participate, is rotated in order to make it feasible to $1,500.
And that really is the question we have now, because we know we can handle it, we know we can do it. We just would like direction to our staff. Do we do it on an annual basis and rotate the foundations, or do we have the proceeds go to one foundation and they distribute it? And like you said, $125 a month divided by 3, I don't know how much.
And the other thing is that I know you just came up with the figure, but the original question I asked is, how much do we really buy from Amazon up to this point, so that you can determine that it's $125 a month?
We have a limit imposed on us currently with Amazon, even pre-Amazon Smile, or someone said frown earlier, no. So our limit currently is we cannot purchase more than $25,000 a month, and that's their rules to a public entity or our entity like ours. So that's how we come up with 125. Now, if we would only purchase 10,000 one month, and that's a good example, perhaps in one fiscal year we don't reach that 25,000 a month. So that's just what we would be dealing with. We're going to try to be as equitable as possible. We're asking for direction to be as equitable as possible, but we can't guarantee if we go from year to year that it's going to be the same.
That was my next question, because if it did fall below that amount that we spend, then that wouldn't be $125 a month.
Right.
So then it would
We
be
just
more
know that's our
equitable
limit.
to allow it to one particular organization in order to make it more meaningful, even though it wouldn't be that much money, but, sometimes $100 is worth more than $5, so what's the board's feeling?
Annual's the more bang for the buck, I think.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to move that we direct staff to come back with the annual rotating program. for this.
And we really don't need to come back to you.
Oh, okay.
We're asking tonight for direction just to begin
Just to
moving
begin
forward.
the process, and then the amount will come.
But we would ask what.
Well, it rotate between the Columbia, MJC Foundations, and the Great Valley.
Yes, so we need to know from the board, where would you like to start?
Oh, which one?
Yes.
Can we have two long sticks and a short one?
Yeah.
I know where Ann wants to start. I
Yeah.
think I know where Mike would like to start.
Random would be fine, put 3 names in a hat and pull them out and do it in that order.
And then you can rotate it from there.
Anybody have a coin? No.
Three-sided coin, I don't, but.
I think that would be a reasonable solution, is to let the foundation determine to whatever draw names or draw a number, and then allocate it to one particular portion of the organization per year, and then rotate it, I think,
And then rotate in September,
whenever they would start.
whenever it starts. Okay.
School starts.
Yeah, it would have been nice to start at the fiscal year, but we'll rotate according to
Figure it
when we
out.
start.
Yeah.
Preferable? Fiscal
Okay,
year.
so I think I've got direction now. We will put 3
Implement
names
the
in a hat
program.
and come up with where we start.
I think it would be reasonable to start with GVM, seeing as that was
They
Trustee
brought it up. I was
DeMartini's
gonna
idea.
suggest
that.
I mean, let's go with that.
Okay.
All right,
What do you-
thank
what
you.
do
Sure.
I mean, all this put stuff
It
in a
was
hat
my
and drawing out.
idea.
Let's just
Yeah.
go with
Okay,
GVM.
is that the desire of the board then?
For
That's
the first
fine.
one.
All right, thank you.
All right.
Okay, we go to the next item on the agenda is 6.5, is consideration of a resolution censuring trustee Ann DeMartini for conduct inconsistent with the board's code of ethics, standards of practice. Board Policy Administrative Procedure 2715 provided a violation of the board's code of ethics, standards of practice will be addressed by the board. AP 2715 provides that the board chair will address any violation and will first discuss the violation with the trustee to reach a resolution. If further action is deemed necessary, the board chair appoints an ad hoc committee to determine and recommend any further action to the entire board of trustees. The ad hoc committee consists of the board chair, vice chair, and immediate past chair. On April 28, 2016, trustee Ann DeMartini sent an email message to Jan Mathis, a classified employee. Ms. Mathis found the email to be a reprimand for a personal political action not related to district business. Ms. Mathis experienced significant physical, mental, and emotional reaction to the email, and these reactions continue and have been long-lasting. On May 4th, 2016, Ms. Mathis forwarded the email to me and other trustees asking us to take action to support her and prevent any further emails of this kind. Trustee DeMartini admitted sending the message, but not intended to be a reprimand or a chastise Ms. Mathis. I met with Trustee DeMartini on June 30th, 2016. After that meeting, I appointed an ad hoc committee consisting of me, the board chair, Lynn Martin as vice chair, and Don Viss as immediate past chair. The ad hoc committee met with Ms. Mathis and then met again to consider the recommendation to the Board of Trustees. The ad hoc committee is recommending that the Board of Trustees censure Trustee DeMartini. We have a draft resolution including a copy of Trustee DeMartini's email and Ms. Mathis' email to the rest of the trustees. On August 3rd, 2016, Trustee DeMartini was given a copy of the draft resolution. Notice that the ad hoc committee was recommending her censure and a copy of this resolution. Excuse me. She was also advised that she would have a chance to address the board during consideration of this matter. The board has been provided with a copy of the draft resolution. For the purpose of continued discussion, I will entertain a motion to accept the motion as recommended by the ad hoc committee to the board and have a second. No voting will take place at that time. We will begin the comments with from the public, then Trustee DeMartini will be able to make her presentation, then the board will consider the resolution in open session. So with that, the floor is now open for any public comment, if there is public comment. Seeing nobody to step forward, we'll close the public hearing. Trustee DeMartini, would you like to make a comment at this, or a presentation?
Yes, but one question, did you want to get a motion first?
That's
Yeah, you
right.
said you were gonna
You
get.
said that.
Need a motion.
That's right, I got ahead of myself. We have a motion?
I'll move the recommendation.
Okay, we have a second? Okay, so now the floor is open to you for comments and presentation.
Okay. Well, I prepared a statement after last week, a week ago today, that I was informed that this was transpiring, and any of you that are in the audience have the agenda, you have a chance to see what I wrote and what Jan's response